Welcome to Let Me Tell You About My Period. I'm Malia.
And I'm Liesel, and we're here to discuss all things periods, menstruation, and beyond.
Hey, Liesel.
Hey, what?
Did you know your first period is called menarche?
Malarkey.
No, it's true.
Silly word.
My grandma used to pronounce it menarche, but it's actually menarche. Okay, so all jokes aside, today's episode, we're going to be talking about our own first periods. Liesel, when did you first learn about periods?
Honestly, I know we had sex ed in elementary school, though I remember it feeling very anatomy focused and not very personal. My first more personal recollection of periods, really, I have to attribute to Judy Blume. I remember reading Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which was not, as you mentioned to me, not really part of general media or popular culture at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But
I wasn't allowed to read it.
Really?
Yeah.
On what grounds?
I think it was considered too mature, which was interesting because my family was very focused on read whatever you want.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, at least as was the case in my family, like there was liberality among some subjects, but a lot less when it came to the subject of sex and bodies.
Mm-hmm. And then you said the sex ed at your school was very anatomy focused. At my school, it was in the 5th grade, and it was very, I think, anatomy focused as well, but also heavily focused on periods. But we were given, and it was with boys and girls in the same classroom, we were given brochures and told, go home and talk to your parents about
Oh
this.
boy, they really passed the buck to the parents.
Oh, absolutely. And so I brought the brochures to my mom and was like, I'm supposed to talk to you about this. And my mom said, do you have questions? And I said, no, because I really didn't want to talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
We had one girl in our class that had her period very early, and it happened at school while she was wearing white pants, and it sort of stigmatized it for the entire class. You sort of mentioned, though, that a lot of your classmates, everybody was kind of in anticipation and waiting for their first period.
I think so. It's not necessarily, I think that people were excited to get their period, or maybe not outright, but on some level it was like a rite of passage, of course. Mm-hmm. And there's some anxiety waiting for it to happen to you. What's it going to feel like? When am I going to need supplies? Right. When am I going to maybe kind of be on the same level as my friends, maybe who've already gotten their periods?
Mm-hmm. And then where were you when you got your first period?
Okay, so my parents were divorced, and I spent part of the week with my mom, part of the week with my dad. And I was, of course, at my dad's house when it happened.
Of course.
And I was pretty young. I think I was probably about 11. So I think I was a little caught by surprise. I didn't think it would happen quite that early. Mm-hmm. And, as with all memories from childhood, some of the details are hazy. I remember more the feelings around getting my period.
Like emotional feelings?
Yeah, I think so. Like the feeling that uncertainty, but then also feeling a sense of love and being cared for by my dad.
Oh, okay.
Who was, I think, a little caught off guard as well.
Sure.
But very sweet about it. He offered to immediately go to the store and get me supplies, get me pads, which we didn't have.
Oh, sweet dad.
Yes. And then he also offered to go buy me food.
Aww.
He was very concerned about how I felt. And I think I had some cramps, and some bloating and whatever. And maybe this wasn't the best thing for him to get, but I asked if he'd go get me a burrito. So he brought me home, I think, a bean and cheese burrito. And I felt very taken care of and very comforted. So it was a positive experience overall.
That is so sweet. My first period was very different. I don't really remember having cramps or anything. I just remember I was at my friend's house and her dad was a doctor. And so I actually learned more about periods at their house from the books that he brought home for her and her sister. And I remember, after the sex ed talk at school, my friend and I kind of poring over those books, but they didn't really talk about periods. It was more just about anatomy and things like that. But
more of a clinical perspective.
Very clinical. And I probably could have talked to their mom about it more easily than my own mom, but I didn't. But I was in the bathroom at their house and there was like a stain in my underwear. It wasn't a lot, but I was like, oh, is this my period? After I got over kind of the shock, I actually stole my friend's sister's pads.
Did you tell your friend?
I did not.
You did not.
And
kept things under the cloak of secrecy.
I'm not sure if it was the second or third period I had, but her sister caught me stealing her products.
So you didn't tell your parents at all for ongoing periods. You just continued to
steal from my friend's sister. To
filch supplies.
And I probably could have even asked my friend's parents to get me supplies, and they 100% would have. But I think part of me was a little bit embarrassed because I was already wearing a bra, and my mom was very matter-of-fact about buying me bras. My grandma did the whole, oh, you're a woman now, and made it way over the top. And my dad teased me about it, and I didn't want to repeat that experience with my period.
So there was a little bit of shame already internalized a bit around your body and your body's needs.
Yeah, and not wanting, I never liked the focus on me. And I was the oldest of three, and my sister was a couple years behind me. And I don't know, it was just very hush-hush.
It is interesting. You and I, very different experiences, and yet we were both the first, the oldest children. So we sort of had to go through that without having any, having had any examples before us to look at.
Well, and my mom never talked about her period with me. I had seen her products in the bathroom, but I guess it never occurred to me to ask about them or anything like that. It never occurred to me to steal my own mom's products. Maybe I was afraid she would notice. I don't know. But my friend's sister caught me stealing them and sort of started feeding them to me.
So did you ever end up asking your mom or parents directly before you did? And how did that go?
Did. I was so embarrassed, and I think I just kind of mumbled, I need period. I need pads, something like that. And my mom was like, okay. And of course brought me like the monster size.
Oh gosh, the diapers.
Yes. Which, every 5th or 6th grader wants to deal with.
Well, with regard to my mom, my first exposure to periods was her just keeping very careful track of her periods in her planner. I don't know. I think I saw her like noting something each month and was like, what is she doing?
Okay.
And so I sort of saw that careful monitoring of her own period. And then I remember her telling me about some of her own period experiences, including getting a tampon stuck when she was quite young and needing maybe assistance or guidance from her mom in removing it. Okay. So that sort of instilled a little bit of fear there for me.
Gotcha.
Probably prompting me to use the diaper pads longer than I needed to before transitioning to tampons.
I definitely was afraid of that. Yeah. So I didn't use tampons for a really long time because I was really afraid of that. And we both have worked in the emergency room, and I've seen enough people in the ER coming in with a stuck or lost tampon. So I think maybe more people need education around how to properly use their period products, which maybe we'll talk about in a future episode.
I like that idea.
So how do you remember your friends reacting to their first periods or reacting to you having your period? Did they know?
Gosh, I don't know that I officially told friends, but I think there would come moments then at school where, somebody else would get their period and be like, do you have a pad? Or, there was kind of that camaraderie there around sharing supplies or helping someone out when they were in a pickle.
Okay.
But it was still hush hush because I think even though we knew it was normal, it just wasn't talked about super openly.
Right. And I think that I don't remember a whole lot of that camaraderie until I was in high school. And then, it was like, do you have a pad or a tampon, or I need a sweatshirt to tie around my waist because I don't have anything, those types of things. And nobody wanted to go to the school nurse to ask for a product. There was one teacher in high school, though, that I'm pretty sure she had products in the room and would help you out if you needed it. But, teachers didn't want to let you to go to the bathroom, and you didn't want to stand up and be like, but I have my period. Right? There were girls that would, but I certainly wasn't one of those. So we both have friends with daughters and kids that are probably about the age to have periods, right? Do you have friends in that age category, or with kids in that age category? If one of those kids approached you and said, Liesl, I need to talk to you and don't want to talk to my mom about this, and they told you they had their first period, how would you help them?
For sure. I think normalizing it is so key, and not making it a big deal. not being like, you're a woman now, but just being like, oh gosh, how are you feeling? Do you need any supplies?
Can I get you a burrito?
Because boy, does it hit the spot anytime, whether or not you are experiencing menarche. But yeah, I think I would feel privileged too, or, a sense of pride that they felt comfortable talking to me.
Yeah, there's a trust there.
Yeah. And so I'd quickly set them up with some supplies, if they had cramps, maybe see if I can help get them something to address that, or a heat pack. And then kind of be curious about, hey, have you told your mom, or are you concerned?
I help you talk to your mom?
Yeah. What do you
dad?
need to be able to talk to your parents so that they can get you some additional supplies?
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Probably very similarly, asking if they have any questions, concerns, fears. Do they need help figuring out how to use whatever products? And definitely encouraging them to talk to their parents about it, or helping them talk to their parents about it, or whoever is responsible for them.
So they're not just stealing other people's supplies on the down low.
The older sisters of their friends' supplies. I think it was far less normalized to talk about when we were that age.
Agreed.
So I do feel it's more an acceptable topic these days, but I'm sure there are still families and kids where it's not.
A little more taboo. Yeah, but we'll definitely have to get the perspective of some different generations on this.
Absolutely. And if you would like to be a guest interviewed about your first period, please get in touch with us at letmetellyouboutomyperiod.com.
Let's talk about sex.
Mako, are you old enough for this discussion?
Just so you guys know, Mako is Malia's very sweet dog who is basically just staring at us, waiting for us to stop doing what we're doing, which is nonsensical to her.
So if for the second half of the episode, if you hear any squeaky noises, dog barks, dog growls, things like that, my dog is here with us. That was Liesel throwing her toy, if you heard that. She very much wants to be part of this.
She's very cute and hard to resist. Anyways, as we mentioned, the second half of each Let Me Tell You About My Period episode will be based on a specific topic, and we'll be diving into research and, where applicable, talking to experts.
If we are repetitive at all, we apologize. This is our first episode, and
be
we're
kind
learning as we go. Since we're releasing the first episode to coincide with Valentine's Day, we thought we would dive in and talk about periods and sex. While it's our belief that talking about periods should be normalized and that children should understand their bodies before experiencing puberty, please know some of the discussion today may be graphic. If you're not ready for younger people or others in your life to hear this discussion, please hit pause and pop on some headphones.
Before we talk about our own experiences, we want to touch on the fact that periods are political in many ways and also have extensive differing cultural and societal norms around the world, often including a lot of negative perceptions and taboos that seem to be heightened when it comes to periods and sex. Unfortunately, most of the research we found is only qualitative in nature, and quantitative data is scant, with only very small and very few studies done so far.
I do also want to mention that we are looking at this with a Western American lens, but this is obviously something that affects half of the population of the entire world. So if we don't touch on something that's particularly relevant to you, we do apologize for that. But we also don't want an episode that's 500 hours long. So
you're welcome.
We do want to define a couple of terms. Qualitative studies means they focus on answering questions like why or how. The information or responses to questions are often based on opinions or personal experiences and not related to numeric data, which would be quantitative. Quantitative studies focus on how many, how often, how much, and quantitative also means the information is measurable. Also, my dog is right next to Mako's, right next to Liesel's head microphone. So if you hear her, I apologize. Anyhow, some of the qualitative studies we found were able to pull out quantitative data, but again, the size of these studies and amount of data is small.
I would love to see a lot more quantitative research in this area. Although we want to avoid the binary, since we live in such a diverse world, research into women's health in general is far behind that into men's health. For a long time, male study or test subjects were considered the default.
Menstrual blood wasn't even used in menstrual-related research or testing of menstrual products until 2023, when Oregon Health Sciences University conducted the first study of its kind using actual menstrual blood. Prior to this, studies of menstrual products, in particular, were done with water. Water, leading to incredibly misleading claims and packaging labels. So if you have ever been disappointed with a period product or a tampon or a pad not doing what it was supposed to, that's probably why.
You think they could have at least used something a little more viscous?
Right. We're recording this in 2026. That was only 3 years ago that they did this research. Crazy. Anyhow, we will get more into this study and period products themselves in a future episode, but this is illustrative of the fact that research into menstruation in general is extremely lacking.
We also need to mention that anything discussed during this or any other episode of Let Me Tell You About My Period is not medical advice and is being shared for informational and entertainment purposes only. If you have concerns about your period or other aspects of your health and well-being, please consult your doctor or other healthcare professionals. In addition, while our research was fairly extensive, it was not exhaustive.
Now that we have that out of the way, Liesl, have you ever had sex while on your period?
I have. Have you?
Yes, but it was either at the very beginning or very end, and so I wasn't having a full flow, shall we say. And so I didn't really recognize that I was on my period until afterwards, and there was some blood on the condom.
Some evidence. Yes.
One partner was very disgusted. You can imagine that colored future interactions. That relationship did not last very long. The other partner where this happened, he was totally supportive and not fazed at all. He was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. He was a little surprised, but once he got over the surprise, he was like, whatever. And that made me trust him more when it came to future encounters, sexual and non-sexual.
Two different partners, two very different experiences.
I've never had sex like at the height of my period, though. And now that I'm in menopause, that will not be happening. But with that one partner, I probably would have, with the partner that was not phased,
you would have been maybe more open to it.
Definitely been more open to that.
I think for me, for a really long time, I never considered having sex on my period. It was just, that's a natural break in sexual activity. So I think similarly to you, for a long time, I only had sex maybe accidentally or intentionally, but at the very beginning or very end to minimize mess. However, recently I came across a product. I'd used menstrual cups before, but I found a menstrual disc that claimed to be, allow you to have mess-free sex. And so I have been able to experiment with using that while on my period.
I definitely would have considered that.
In the one relationship.
Yeah. But at the same time, my body would be physically so much more sensitive during my period that I think that aspect might have made me not want to have period sex.
So many variables, different partners, different experiences of one's period. All that to say, sex on your period is not for everyone. And that's totally fine. We'll talk about benefits, maybe some cons, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide if you want to try it. Maybe you never want to try it. Celebrate Valentine's Day and your sexuality however you will.
With your consenting partner or lack of partner.
Absolutely.
In looking at the science and the data that's out there, it turns out there's not a whole lot. We found a lot of overlapping materials and studies. We found articles and things referencing each other. So this is an area, periods and sex, where a lot more research needs to be done. In fact, what I found kind of referenced the same 3 or 4 studies, one of which Liesl will end up talking about. But the research seems to be split into 2 distinct categories. One is qualitative analysis related to menstruating people's experiences, their attitudes and perceptions. one of the studies of which included 40 women, which Liesel's going to discuss. The other area seems to be specific to menstrual sex, specifically related to endometriosis risk. Personally, I found it really disappointing how little information there was available from the scientific community.
Yes, and I think given how little quantitative data there seems to be, we should take some of what we found with a healthy dose of skepticism.
But by skepticism, I don't think we mean necessarily we don't believe what we found, but rather a lot more research needs to be done, and we really need to scrutinize claims. The fact that 2023 study on period products was the first of its kind using menstrual blood instead of water really raises the bar for all future study related to periods, including when it comes to sex.
Exactly. But most sources do note a lot of positive benefits to having sex during menstruation.
That is, if the menstruating person and their partner can get past societal, cultural, and personal taboos around sex.
Yes, if you can get past those things, period sex, when an orgasm is achieved by the person on their period, has been reported to relieve menstrual cramps, increase pleasure, and decrease stress. Plus, menstrual blood, as a bonus, acts as a natural lubricant. The key here is reaching orgasm, since that act releases a rush of endorphins,
the happy hormone,
that may act as a natural analgesic, offering relief from menstrual cramps and related headaches.
Orgasms during period sex also have been reported to be much stronger, since the body's already more sensitive during menstruation, and sex and orgasm increases blood flow in the pelvic region.
So if you are already extremely sensitive during sex, this could be a good thing. Or it could lead to orgasms that are too strong to enjoy. But my research also notes that period sex, especially when orgasm is achieved, also often leads to much better sleep quality,
which most of us could use. It does need to be also mentioned that while there seems to be some pretty compelling positive benefits to having sex during one's period, it is not without risks, like most things in life.
Of course, we would be remiss not to mention those.
Yes. As with any sexual activity, there is always the risk of sexually transmitted infections and diseases, including HIV and hepatitis. So it's important to have regular checkups with your healthcare providers, or to discuss the risk in order to discuss your personal risks. And it's important to consider using condoms or dental dams, depending on your situation. Not on one's period.
And just like having sex when not menstruating, urinary tract infections are always a potential risk, as are other vaginal infections. Practicing good hygiene, such as urinating and showering after sex, may help reduce these risks.
And while period sex can heighten arousal and enjoyability, as we mentioned, the body's already more sensitive. So the body is already more sensitive, and period cramps and bloating are already uncomfortable. This is a time where sexual position could be even more important, where positions where the pelvis is tilted upward, or where the menstruating person is on top or in control of the position, can help alleviate some sensitivity or pressure on the abdomen.
And just because you are on your period does not mean you can't get pregnant. Let this be a PSA. There is a misconception about this. You may not be as likely to get pregnant while actively on your period, but it's still possible, especially towards the end of your period. Fun fact, maybe fun, maybe freaky, sperm can live in the body for several days.
And yeah, I think that's a huge misconception. I think a lot of people are raised with the belief that you have sex, the sperm either fertilize the egg or don't, and if they don't, they die. Nope, not true. If you have endometriosis, a complex condition where uterine tissue grows outside the uterus, particularly around the fallopian tubes and ovaries, although it can grow anywhere in the body, I don't have great news for you. This is an area where more research is absolutely needed, but the scant amount currently available mostly points to sex for endometriosis sufferers as potentially negative. That said, the research I found does say that this is mostly a theoretical idea. The thought is that those with endometriosis could experience something called retrograde menstruation while having period sex. This means that sex during menstruation can increase blood flow.
And here we're talking about blood flow through your body's veins and arteries, not about period blood.
Okay, so the idea is that for people with endometriosis, sexual activity will increase blood flow not only to the pelvis, but to the endometrial tissue. So this tissue growing outside of the pelvis is very complex to treat and navigate. So if you have endometriosis and are considering sex during menstruation, please talk to your healthcare provider to determine whether or not this is an actual risk for your own unique situation. Even though the medical literature acknowledges that this is theoretical with not enough research to definitively say if period sex for those with endometriosis is safe or not.
All right, switching gears on a more practical, realistic note, I think it's important to also talk briefly about the potential messiness of period sex. I mean, we talked about this a little bit in our own experiences, but we want to say, fortunately, if you are mess-averse, there are some things that can be done to mitigate the mess. For example, you can lay down dark towels on the bed.
Or a spicy time blanket.
Oh, what is that?
So there is somebody that I follow on Facebook, and I'll have to go back and find the link for our, to put it on our blog, but he sells a wide variety of products, including menstrual products, and he has these blankets that can be used for changing your baby's diapers or having sex. They're waterproof, but they are also soft. They're not crinkly the way a lot of waterproof materials are, and you can just throw it in the washer. But he calls them in his ads spicy time blankets.
I have to say, I appreciate that a man made this product.
Yeah.
So he's clearly promoting period sex and on some level.
Yeah.
Anyhow, as I mentioned before, there are also menstrual discs designed to allow clean or cleaner sex while on one's period. The disc sits at the back of the vaginal canal and shouldn't interfere with penetration. Of course, this is considering heterosexual relationships that involve penetration. Mm-hmm. So this is limited.
It still could help with the mess, whether you're in a heterosexual relationship or not.
Great point. Another thing about the discs is that you could actually have stronger orgasms, as it may rub on the cervix during sex and provide extra stimulation. Finally, there is, of course, shower sex as an option.
But then who gets to stand in the hot water while the other one is a little chilly?
Yeah, shower sex and shared showers is always better. It's better in theory, but yes, we can debate that. Anyways, there are clearly lots of pros and cons to think about when it comes to period sex, even if you remove societal, cultural, and personal taboos.
All right, so on that note, let's go back to talking more about the societal, cultural, and personal taboos. I mentioned that you were going to talk about the study that you found.
Yes. Brianne Foz, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a professor of women and gender studies at Arizona State University. And she writes about these things, noting that throughout history, norms, we're talking about U.S. history right now, norms encouraging women to hide their menstruation have contributed to feelings of shame and even disgust for women surrounding their bodies and periods specifically. She highlights the fact that there has been limited research on how negative cultural interpretations of menstruation have affected women's sex lives. Foz did a qualitative study on 40 American women, so fairly small sample size, but the women were from across different races and different sexual identities or orientations. And among her research subjects, she found that negativity towards sex during menstruation centered on 4 areas. 1, women's physical discomfort and labor. 2, partner's discomfort. 3, negative self-perception. And 4, emotional labor managing a partner's judgment and feelings. To me, this appears to suggest that sex while on one's period, while full of potential for pleasure, may demand a lot from a woman physically and emotionally.
Yeah, well, and not just in heterosexual relationships, but I could imagine that in any relationship, the person having the period
is in a different position than the other partner, for sure.
Definitely. Hopefully both partners are very supportive of one another. So we'll link to that research study and others on our blog, letmetellyyouaboutmyperiod.com. But returning to the subject of how we're socialized to think about sex, I can't think of a single time I've seen or heard anything positive on TV, social media, or even a discussion with friends about specifically sex during menstruation. I don't recall talking about it ever with a friend.
Sure, you're the first one I've discussed it with.
And all of our listeners.
Of course, and all of you.
Usually, I think, talking about periods in general, I think is often met with some revulsion or some, hesitation. But then sex during menstruation, I think would probably be met with a lot of revulsion, just because of where we are as a society, even though there's positive possible
benefits as we've seen. Yeah. And true, in Western popular media, period sex is rarely touched on at all. And periods are often used in movies and TV as a trope related to pregnancy. Either it's shown as a woman getting her period and being relieved she's not pregnant, or getting her period and being upset because she was hoping to be pregnant.
Despite the reality that sperm can live in the body for however many days.
As we found out.
None of this is as simple as pregnant, not pregnant because of your period.
Much more complex than things are portrayed in the movies. We'll talk about periods and their broader portrayal in media in a future episode. But when it comes specifically to sex, we want to mention the 2016 film American Honey shows a woman removing her tampon before sex as a normal part of life. And then the book 50 Shades of Grey, which of course involves a unique set of sexual dynamics, but it apparently includes a scene where the male partner removes the woman's tampon before having sex.
I don't think I'd be okay with that. I don't know. And maybe that's my own bias and my own taboo. Although the book, apparently it's evidence of his controlling this, but I think it would be very strange to have somebody else.
I do not disagree with you on that.
According to the small body of research around period sex, younger women are less likely to feel stigma around it, which I think suggests a shift culturally, at least in Western cultures, where most of the small body of research we found has been carried out. An important factor about period sex and destigmatizing it, which we already touched on, is your partner's attitudes. And in relationships where periods are an open topic and partners are supportive, period sex is much more likely to be a positive experience, which I think makes sense, right? Most things in life are better if you and your partner are open and supportive.
Absolutely. As you shared, some, your own experiences with two different partners.
It appears that sexual partners who find period sex to be dirty or disgusting often results in the menstruating partner not wanting to engage in period sex. I mean, that was definitely the case for me. Not just period sex, but sex in general, due to the perceived perception of the other person, even if having period sex would be beneficial.
Going back to portrayals of period sex and periods in general in the media, most of the negative pushback seems to come from men. Well, most women are supportive and would like to see this as a normalized topic in media. The lead of the movie, I May Destroy You, has said, periods are something so normal. It's weird to see how it's been stigmatized to be something strange when it happens.
I mean, when 50% of the population globally is having periods.
Get used to it. Someone near you is menstruating.
Who might it be? But it should be so normalized that we don't even care.
Exactly.
While we could talk about this for much longer, we're going to wrap up with this from the character Samantha from the show Sex and the City. If someone is an asshole about you having a period during sex, they're going to be an asshole in general.
Preach, Samantha.
You can find more information, including a transcript of this episode, all of our research, and more at letmetellyoutaboutmyperiod.com.
And lastly, we're looking for a diverse group of people from all walks of life to be interviewed about their experiences having periods. If you'd like to be interviewed for the show, or if you have a period-related question you'd like us to answer, please email us at letmetellyoutaboutmyperiod@gmail.com. You can also comment on the blog post for this episode if you have something you'd like to share or say about sex while on your period. Maybe you think sex on your period is the greatest thing ever and you want to tell everyone they should be doing it. Maybe you think it's gross. Fine. Either way, we want to know why.
In particular, if you think it's gross, I want to know why. I don't want you... I would be disappointed if the comments are just like, that's gross, that's disgusting, nothing else.
Yeah, we don't just want opinions. We want you to share.
Continue the conversation.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. So we're going to be signing out, and we want to thank you for listening. We're figuring this out, and we will be receptive to feedback. So reminder for all of you out there, you know, those of you having sex, do what feels good for you, but most importantly, make sure it's consensual.